Here in the northern Rockies, dark winter months are outlasted in basements, dens, and nooks, where kindred souls gather to share intel, swap fly patterns, and relive the memories from seasons past. This gathering spot, known locally as a February room, is the inspiration for this podcast. No matter the season, the door is always open to those with a fly fishing story to tell. Brought to you by CD Fishing USA, the North American distributor for Composite Development's fly rods and fishing accessories. Tech, precision, ingenuity, legacy. Go to cdfishing.us and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Here's your host, Lauren Carnop, and this is the February Room.
Welcome to the February Room. Today, my guest is a close friend of mine, Michael Gibson, who's also the Idaho Field Coordinator for Trout Unlimited. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Lauren. When you called and invited me, the first thought I had is she must have had somebody cancel.
That is so not true. You know, I was just kind of waiting. I needed to up my audience to make sure that everyone could hear your stories. And I'm ready to hear a fishing story because I know you have some.
Yeah, I have a lot of fishing stories. Some of the probably more interesting ones involve your husband.
They all do. They always do.
So I'll tell one with Justin in it. It was actually my first foray into steelheading. I had done a little bit of steelheading just by chance, but it was the first targeted trip for steelhead, and we lit out of Missoula for the Deschutes and rendezvoused with a couple of Justin's old buddies that he steelheaded with on the Deschutes for years, and we left after work on a Friday on a 3-day weekend. You know, the drive from Missoula to Maupin is, I don't know, 6 hours or something. And so we rolled into Maupin at about 11 o'clock. And the guys we were going with, they had been at the bar since about 7. And so we jumped out of Maupin and went to the put-in. Probably got there at about 1. And so then there was a long discussion of whether we should set up tents and get up fresh in the morning. And it was decided that if we did that, we would probably get beat down the river by 2 or 3 parties. So we decided to just launch. And so we scrambled around in the dark, everybody in headlamps. Got everything loaded up. By that time, it was about 4 a.m. So we were like, well, we can either sit around here and wait to get a little bit of light in the sky, or, again, we can just get going. So we were not making great decisions that night, so we just decided to float. And I remember getting about not very far downstream, maybe a half a mile, and you could see with our headlamps that we were coming up on an island. And Justin was Justin rowing my boat? I think Mike was rowing our boat. He hadn't been on that section in years, and so he's yelling back to the other boats of whether to take the left channel or the right channel at the island, and all that they would yell back to us is, yeah, that's the island. So we floated a little further, and Mike pulled over, and I was with was over there that weekend too. So he kicked us out of the boat, and we started fishing this run. Fished it for about an hour. Came walking back to the boat, and he was asleep in the cockpit. And we're like, yeah, we're done. Let's go somewhere else. And he lifted his head up and he said, fish it again. Sleep. So we fished it again. Didn't catch anything. So anyway, we moved downstream and had a great camp that weekend. We did mop into the mouth and basically just floated into camp and then fished out of camp until we had to float out. And we didn't catch a lot of fish, but man, it was a good time. And then we got off the river, and I was headed back to town, but these guys went. We hit another part of the story is brought an ape suit for the weekend.
Of course.
So there was always somebody fishing in an ape suit or an ape mask. And so I had to get back to go to work. So I headed back to town. Well, they went to a bar in Maupin. And at some point, went back out to his car and put on the ape suit and went back into the bar. Some kid there that had been drinking, and he was messing with, and he's a retired hockey player.
Yes.
So he kept coming over and touching him, and finally said, "Listen, buddy, don't touch the monkey." And the guy did it again, and all hell broke loose, I guess. I wasn't there.
Oh, no.
Are not allowed in that bar in Maupin for the rest of the I don't know if this is a family fishing story you're looking for. That one's sort of on the non-family side.
I feel like the non-family side is sometimes the most interesting fishing story. So no, I love it. But you have to think though, those people in Maupin would probably be like, put on your monkey suit before you come in this bar. Let's see if you are who we think you are.
Yeah, exactly. If he told me not to touch the monkey, I would not touch the monkey.
No, I love that. I bet no steelhead were caught.
I had one on for about 5 minutes, and it came unbuttoned. I think Justin caught a couple, but that's a steelhead trip for you.
Oh, well, it's a memorable one, of course. It's the most memorable one than the one that you caught.
Well, the steelhead, a lot of the steelhead stories are all about what happens in camp, right? There's not always a lot of fish caught.
Sometimes I think it's not about the fishing more than just being on the river with friends.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So you have the title as Idaho Field Coordinator for Trout Unlimited. Can you give a little description of what that job title entails?
Yeah, well, I work for it's called the Angler Conservation Project. So we decided back in the early 2000s, Trout Unlimited has always been sort of a rock rolling organization as far as we do a lot of habitat work, and then we had a government affairs team that did a lot of work in DC, but we didn't really have a ground game in the states regarding public land protections and state legislative stuff that was going on. And so we realized we needed field organizers out in the states to organize people that are passionate about hunting, fishing, recreating outdoors, clean water, and bring those people in contact with their elected leaders and people in the Forest Service, the BLM. And so that was originally called the Public Lands Initiative, and now it's the Angler Conservation Project. And so most of my work is sort of interfacing with federal land managers, state legislators, state agencies like Idaho Fish and Game and Idaho Department of Lands, governor's office, in figuring out, good policies that protect fish and wildlife and water. And so I spend a lot of my time in the spring. We have a legislative session every spring, so I sort of get in the phone booth like Superman and throw on a suit and go down and lobby at the legislature and try to make sure that fish are managed correctly. They're getting the proper amount of budget money from the state. And then also we've got folks that have decided that we don't need public lands and we should hand those over to the states or privatize them. And so a lot of the work we do is making sure that our public land legacy stays strong.
Absolutely. I can't imagine why people would think that public lands isn't important for someone who the only way I could go and recreate outside is by going on public lands. Like I don't have a lot of money. I don't have any private land to go fishing. And even this past weekend hunting, I think that's so great, Michael, that you get to be the voice of the fish and also for the anglers and the people who want to enjoy the resources that is our big backyard. You said you were working on some policies. Is there one in particular that you're working on right now?
There's a lot of stuff. I just got done yesterday submitting comments on a large mine proposal that's just outside of McCall. It's a stone's throw from the Frank Church, the stibnite mine. A company called Midas Gold has wants to remine an area. The place is kind of bombed out. It's been mined a couple, three times in the last century, and they want to go back in and basically remine. They have better processing facilities now, so they can get more gold out of ore than they used to. So it makes sense for them to go back in and remine it, and it is so far back off the beaten path that it's a really awesome part of the world. Obviously, there's a lot of mine waste in there already. They claim they're going to go in and mine it and then leave it in better shape than they found it, but there's just a lot of question marks on that. So anyway, it's at the headwaters of the South Fork, which feeds into the South Fork of the Salmon. Excuse me. There's, I think, 4 South Forks that everybody refers to in Idaho. The South Fork of the Salmon feeds into the Salmon River. There's salmon and steelhead in there. There's bull trout in there. There's cutthroat in there. So we've been working hard the last couple months on comments on their draft environmental impact statement. So that's one thing we're starting to focus on quite a bit. And then as far as like state policies, that's sort of a moving target. It changes every legislative session. In general, we have a pretty conservative majority in the legislature. It's a super majority, actually. And so a lot of our work in the state legislature is defense against public land takeover stuff. It's making sure that fish and wildlife are still accessible to everyone. So, it depends on the day. You ask me what we're working on.
Yeah, so much to work on and so much is at stake. Have you had a project in the past where you've seen the outcomes benefit anglers and the fisheries?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have, as TU, we have a lot of success in that realm. I mean, we do, our project work, especially in the upper salmon drainage in steelhead salmon country, have been huge for creating habitat for struggling steelhead and salmon runs. The problem is we've done all the work now, and we're still not seeing huge fish numbers because they're having a hard time even getting to Idaho, which is why we started working in earnest on policy issues surrounding the lower Snake dams. We just launched a big science report on the science behind dam removal on the lower Snake and why we need a free-flowing snake for these fish. And so a lot of the work we do takes a really long time, but it all ties together. So we've got these folks doing this great habitat work in the upper salmon, and then we've got our policy crew, me included, working on making sure those fish get there to use that. And so that's a big campaign of ours, and we're hoping we can. The steelhead and salmon numbers right now are horrible, and so we got to do something, and we have to do something quickly. We'll see how that goes. Stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing happens, like, do you have a idea of how long it'll be till like the steelhead aren't going to be thriving at all anymore? Like, if it doesn't happen soon?
I wouldn't be able to put a time frame on it. I mean, it
Yeah.
all depends. There's people that say it's all about ocean conditions and not about the dams, but with climate change and other things happening, I don't see the ocean conditions cycling up anytime soon. I mean, they're going to cycle. There's going to be good years and bad years. Each bad year on the fish gets closer to the very bottom, right? So
Yeah.
we're trying to avoid the Lonesome Larry scenario that happened with sockeye. And I try to be a glass half full kind of guy that we're going to be able to pull something off. We'll see.
Well, it's amazing that there's an organization that's focusing on restoring these fisheries, having access to it. I mean, I remember this was a while back, but like fracking, I think it was on the Green River. I can't be positive
Yep.
on that, but these companies come in like this is the safest thing we can do. We're going to go and frack this right on this river, and nothing's bad's going to happen, but we can't tell you what chemicals we're going to be using on this. We can't tell you how deep we're going, but we're going to frack and it's going to be safe. And then obviously it went sideways, and it took a whole cleaning crew, and it was based on Trout Unlimited going in there, fixing it, also having volunteers. And it's just incredible like how sensitive our ecosystem is, and if we
Yeah.
aren't taking care of
Yeah.
it, and we don't have
Yeah.
people like you on the foreground like marching and taking these initiatives and going to the legislature and making policies, I mean, who knows what our future is going to be for our kids to access and enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah, well, we have, I'm a big believer in Trout Unlimited and its mission. Obviously, that's my who I work for, and the reason I do is because of the work that they do. And we have just a ton of great people across the country doing pretty unbelievable work. And you've got to, like in the case you were just talking about on the Green River, we're not opposed to energy development. We're not opposed to a lot of things, but we are really focused on making sure that they happen in the right place and they're not impacting fisheries and that they're done right. And we joke in our program at the Angler Conservation Project, because we do all the policy work and protection work, land protection campaigns. And we always say if we do our job right, we're going to put the restoration biologists out of work. Um, so I don't see that happening very
Right.
soon. And there's a lot of stuff that happened well before there was even a Trout Unlimited that still needs to get cleaned up, unfortunately. But we try to be focused and do campaigns that are reasonable, that don't shut out opportunity for other stakeholders, whether it be ranchers or folks that work on the land. We all drive cars. We know there has to be energy development, but we can do
Yep.
it in a sustainable way, in a way that allows for development, but still protects our fisheries and our wildlife.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all in this world together, and we all need to kind of work together. Even, it's not just our world, it's the fish's world, and it's just all about being kind and just kind of because I think for me when I'm on the river, you kind of actually forget about what work goes behind it. When you're in it, you're like, "Oh, I love this. This is so beautiful. I'm in beautiful Montana. I'm fishing. I'm catching some beautiful fish." But then you kind of, I actually never really take enough time to think about, wow, thanks to Trout Unlimited or, other nonprofit organizations that focus on the environment and taking care of these fisheries. Like that's that's the reason why I'm catching fish is because of the work that you and Trout Unlimited all commit to and your mission of just protecting and making it accessible. So I appreciate your work.
Well, thanks. It's sometimes you wonder if you're making a difference. Every day is a new day, so you just keep banging away.
Yeah, that's all you can do. You got to just do it one step at a time. But I do know you're doing some amazing work, Michael, and you've been always such a proponent for hunting, fishing, and yeah, I think that takes a really strong person and to work for the small people that don't really have a voice in it. I should say you're in Boise, Idaho. Is there a favorite little spot you like to fish out there?
Yeah, probably my most favorite spot in Idaho is the Big Wood River. I've been fishing that stream for a long time. Let's see, Elizabeth and I go back to my wife. We met in the early 90s, 90, and started hanging out together full time in 91, 92. And her folks live in Ketchum, Idaho. And so even when we were in Missoula, we spent a lot of time down in Ketchum, both in the summer and winter. And so I've fished the Big Wood a lot over the years, and it's just it's a great river. It's a wading stream for the most part. I know some folks throw boats in on the lower end, but for the most part, it's just got some great wade fishing. It's a spot that, it obviously Ketchum's a resort town, so there's a lot of people there. A lot of people come to fish in the summertime. And so it gets hit pretty good. I'm not one to hot spot a place, but I don't think the Big Wood River is a secret, so I don't mind talking. And so it's just a stream that I know really well, and it just when we're up in Ketchum, I don't always get a ton of time to go fishing, but it's a spot where you can, if you play your cards right and can get a 2-hour window, you can go get some really good fishing in. I spent a number of years as a fishing guide, so 90% of my fishing when I was in Missoula was out of a boat, and it's just nice to keep it simple and just grab your rod and throw on a pair of Chacos and on a nice warm summer day and go throw some grasshoppers around or something.
I forgot that you were a fishing guide, and I feel that as a fishing guide, you must have had so many experiences on the river with the fishing. Like, did you ever know, like, wow, my career is going to be protecting these fish? Or did you know while you were a guide, like, I want to be working with Trout Unlimited?
My life was not that well thought out, Lauren.
It just rolled. It just unrolled itself.
If you would ask me when I was a fishing guy what I was going to do next, I would probably say, well, I'm going to clean my cooler and get ready for tomorrow. So that was all a day-to-day existence. I got into, I had sort of a circuitous career path. I was, I got out of school, became a fishing guide, did that for handful of years. I went back to school to get my teaching certificate. I was going to be a teacher in the Missoula school district and a fishing guide in the summertime. That was the plan. That was the plan. And then I couldn't get a job as a teacher. The market in Missoula was horrible for teachers. This goes back to not really thinking out your career path. When I got my teaching certificate, I was only able to get my biology endorsement because I was one semester. I hadn't taken the second semester of physics.
Ooh, I hate physics.
Short on credits for getting a broad field science endorsement, which in Montana, where you have all these really small schools, if you're the science teacher, you got to teach biology, you got to teach chemistry, you got to teach earth science, all that stuff. So they tend to hire broad field science endorsed teachers, not just a biology teacher.
Wow, I had no idea.
The reason I didn't take the second semester of physics was because it was in the spring when we have the Squalla Hatch in Missoula, and the class is going to be at 11 o'clock on Monday through Friday every day. And I was like, it's not going to fit into my fishing schedule.
See, you're already a good biologist.
And I went to the first week of class and realized that I was not going to get a good grade in that class. I just gave up on physics. But anyway, so I went back to school, got my teacher certificate, was trying to get a job as a teacher, doing substitute gigs, and then a job came along with a local production company called Barrett Productions, and I got hired just on random happenstance to be a coordinating producer for their hunting and fishing shows. And so I did that for a while. And one of the shows that we did during my tenure there was Trout Unlimited television, which was a great show. The host, Tim Linehan, super good guy. I loved producing that show, and I got to meet all the folks that worked for TU, and also the grassroots folks. We'd go do trips all over the country and meet volunteers that had done restoration projects. And I just really thought TU was a great organization. And then the state council, Montana State Council of Trout Unlimited, added a position for an outreach director. And one of the job requirements, one of the bullets under job requirements was fishes in rows of boat. So I was like, well, at least I got one covered. And I put my name in, and I ended up getting the job. And I worked for the State Council of Montana for almost 9 years. And then Elizabeth and I relocated to Boise. She's a neonatal nurse practitioner, and was trying to get in a little bigger market than Missoula offered. And so we looked around in the West, and it was like Boise, Denver, Salt Lake, Albuquerque were where we initially started looking, and we got lucky. And her first interview was in Boise, so we ended up coming down here, and I did some contract work. I was sort of what they call the trailing spouse. I just quit my job and moved down here, and did some contract work for the Idaho Wildlife Federation. Ran a sportsman's campaign on a sort of a wilderness campaign up in the Boulder White Clouds, and fishing opened back up with TU. So that's where I'm at now.
And you're greatly missed in Missoula. I mean, I'm happy for you guys, and I think you guys are in a great location, but Missoula has missed some two amazing people who used to be part of this community. So, Michael, if anybody's really interested in maybe their local chapter of Trout Unlimited, what's the best way of them reaching out to maybe you or the organization?
Well, we have a great website, tu.org. Easy to remember, short URL. That's got everything you would need to become a member and find out different initiatives that Trout Unlimited's working on. We're really proud of a couple of newer things to that website, tu.org/lower snake. Is all of our information on our lower snake campaign to try to restore steelhead and salmon to Idaho. And then we just launched a new page on our legacy report for the Angler Conservation Program, which goes back to its inception and highlights sort of our signature campaigns that we've been able to get across the finish line.
Well, before we sign off, I want to hear one more fishing story, because I know after so many years being on the river as a guide, Trout Unlimited, you have another one for me, and especially as being Justin's fishing buddy too. I know you guys got more.
Actually, I saved it. It's another Justin story, and you guys were down in Ketchum, which was awesome. This was what 3 years ago now.
Yeah, during the smoke season when it was so smoky in Missoula. Yeah,
you guys were refugees out of Montana and came down and were hanging out in Ketchum, and so we came up. And since I moved here, Justin and I have always, talked about getting on the South Fork. I think he fished it producing a show with Jed a number of years back, and he was always like, we got to go float the South Fork. So we got up that morning, and you guys had that Jeep that was
so crappy.
Jeez. And so our first idea was to hook the trailer to the Jeep and tow the Jeep and the boat down to Mountain Home to the dealership, and then go float the South Fork, and then go back and pick up the Jeep. Somehow that plan fell through, so we ended up having to get the Jeep towed to Mountain Home. And so we did that, and then headed to the South Fork, and it was just one of those days where it just seemed like getting on the river was not going to happen. But somehow we pulled it off, and from the start of the day all the way to the end, we were throwing big hoppers that day, like big hoppers. And we had fish coming up all day long. Went into a little back channel. I remember Justin caught this beautiful brown trout. As he was landing that fish, I finally hooked the fish I was fishing for, and I took a picture of him with his fish while I was landing this fish I had. If I'd known how big this fish was, I would not have been fooling around and taking a picture of Justin. So I landed that fish and ended up being probably, maybe not lengthwise, but it was the biggest trout I've caught in a river. Caught some big ones in ponds and lakes and stuff, but it was just a huge red band, and it was just, I don't know, that day, just every time I think about that day, I got a whole string of pictures in my phone, and it was one of those days where when we were dealing with the car troubles early in the morning, I was just like, I don't think this is going to happen today. I just really don't think it's going to happen. And it ended up being, just one of those days that sticks out. Weather was beautiful, and then I think we came home and had just ended up being a great day that I'll remember.
Yeah, it's so funny though. I think me and Elizabeth, your wife, were getting kind of angry because we thought that you purposely decided to drag the car to Mountain Home so you guys could go fishing on that specific river, because we're like, they said they were going to go fishing closer, and they're leaving us with the baby and the kid in the smoke, and we think they just wanted to trail that car. Like you decided purposely to trailer that Jeep all the way there to go fishing.
I seem to recall a few angry men, and then the thing about the South Fork is once you go down in the canyon, there is no cell service until
yes.
It's where we're like, okay, we're going to be out of service for a little while.
Yeah. And then you guys got off the river and it was like, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
And then we saw the pictures. Obviously super happy. And now it makes good for a podcast. So I guess it comes full circle.
That was one of Justin and I's more successful outings. We've had a few where especially bird hunting, where they sometimes go awry.
And the awry ones are the ones that are most memorable. But it's also like when you're with the good friends catching amazing fish. That's the icing on the cake.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool day. I'll definitely remember it for a long time.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today, Michael, and I appreciate the work that you and Trout Unlimited are doing to keep our waters public and keeping the fish protected. And I definitely am going to keep an eye out. And also, I have to say, just look at your local chapters, because sometimes they have fundraisers, and the best way to maybe support your organizations is by going there, try and put some money down on some cool artwork, and that all goes towards to protecting the waters that you love in your neighborhood. So thank you again.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And I would just tell folks, find your local chapter, stay informed, get involved. We need everyone's voices, especially on public lands protection, and definitely for clean water and fish.
Go to thefebruaryroom.com, where you can access a complete library of our podcast and read more about our guests, their fishing stories, and favorite fly patterns. We're always looking for exceptional fly fishing yarns, and if you have one to spin, shoot us an email at info@thefebruaryroom.com. The February Room is always free, but if you feel like throwing a nickel in the pond, we appreciate any additional listener support. For companies and individuals interested in sponsorship opportunities, please contact us for our media kit. Thanks for stopping by the February Room, and we'll see you down here next week.